What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be going through the spoilers for My Hero Academia Chapter 322, which picks up where we left off last week with Ida tearfully embracing Deku's hand and also Mineta confessing his romantic feelings. Okay, that part with Mineta wasn't actually meant to be romantic, but it did start a whole 100,000 tweet discussion on Twitter with people just debating what it could mean. But in my humble opinion, I don't think Mineta swings that way. I mean, at least not yet anyway. Anyway, the spoilers for today do look pretty good, but as usual for a Thursday, we have a full chapter summary, but the panels and stuff aren't fully released. There are a couple of them here and there, but for the most part, it is just the summary. Before we get into it, don't forget to hit that sub button if you want to see more spoiler videos like this every Thursday, because admittedly I haven't done them for a while, and that was because it was taking a long time to edit them, and you know, just getting really long, but when I'm on camera it is a lot easier. So if you want to see more, let me know in the comments down below. Okay, so the title of this chapter is Great Explosion God Dynamite, which is obviously Bakugo's full hero name, and while this isn't a Bakugo-centric chapter, it definitely has one very important moment for the character that's been building for a really long time. So the chapter starts with Deku thinking that he has to break free from Ida's hand, but he has no power left. At that moment, a chakra released her quirk, so Deku and Ida were both free falling from the sky, and Ida worried they couldn't land safely, but Kirishima was there to catch them. At that moment, Kirishima told Deku that back in the day when they were still middle schoolers, he heard that there's a guy who ran off to save his friend, and this is referring to the sludge villain incident when Deku ran to save Bakugo, even though he was quirkless at the time and he could have died. And as we know from Kirishima's flashback, he heard about this story. He asked Deku if he was the guy that tried to save Bakugo, and Kirishima says that the Deku of that time is their answer. This is implying that he doesn't want any more Dark Deku, he wants the OG Deku, the one who's, willing to just jump in and save his friends and work with his friends, as opposed to the one that runs away from his friends and doesn't want to be with them. Ida asks Kirishima how his timing was so nice, and Kirishima says that it was Endeavor's order, which is a reference to the last chapter when Endeavor basically just said, go in, get Deku, and he told Hawks not to intervene. The rest of the class then approached them, and Mina told Deku to come back to UA, but Deku says he doesn't want to because he's scared, and he doesn't want to cause trouble for other people. He continues by saying that he can't go back to how things used to be, and this is when Bakugo intervenes, and he asks Deku if he remembers what he said after he got impaled by Shigaraki. Deku says he doesn't remember, and Bakugo reminds him that he says don't try to win this on your own. So what this is referring to is back in the War Arc when Midoriya was, he was pretty much trying to defeat AFO by himself, and then there was a point when Bakugo, his body just moves without thinking, and he intervenes, gets in Deku's way, and gets impaled. And the first thing he says after that was, don't try to win this on your own, because at that point, that was literally what Deku was trying to do. Now, all these weeks later, Midoriya is doing the exact same thing again, and he's, trying to defeat AFO by himself, trying to find him. So, Bakugo's kind of saying, don't follow that same path. Bakugo then goes on to say that at the moment he got impaled, he realized to himself that there was something he had to tell Deku. In his mind, Midoriya was always someone that he looked down on because Deku was always quirkless. But although Deku should be far behind him, Bakugo felt that somehow he was far ahead of him. He didn't like that feeling, he didn't want to admit it, and so instead of, acknowledging what was going on inside him, he basically pushed Deku away and began bullying him. This is Bakugo basically confessing that ever since they were kids, even when Midoriya was quirkless, he somehow felt that in his mind Midoriya was ahead of him, and that's why he bullied him to try and keep him down. So yeah, a lot of us kind of suspected that, but it is interesting to see that this is finally 100% confirmed. After they entered UA, nothing went according to how he planned, and every day was filled with realizing Deku's strengths and understanding his own weaknesses. Bakugo said that although he said all of this, he knows that it won't do any justice and make up for all the pain that he's caused Izuku over the years, but still, these are his real feelings. He then says to Izuku, sorry for everything until now, and this is the moment that we've been waiting for a super long time. I felt that it's been building up for this for a while. I think the very first moment was possibly, Deku versus Kacchan 2. That was probably like the beginning when they began to become a bit more civil towards each other. And then obviously during the War Arc when Bakugo and All Might had that flashback conversation, that was a real big hint as to the way it was going. And now here, this is the culmination of that. We see Bakugo literally just straight up apologizing, saying sorry for everything. I was jealous of you. You were quirkless, I still felt intimidated, so I tried to keep you down. And yeah, that's it. I mean, pretty big moment for the series. Bakugo continued by saying that the path Deku and All Might took wasn't wrong, but right now Deku is unsteady, and there are certain things that even ideals can't surpass. For the things that Deku can't do by himself, he wants Midoriya to let Class 1A handle it, and this includes saving the civilians, saving the refugees at UA, and also saving Deku himself. This is Bakugo truly embracing the save to win mindset, which is something that he briefly did during the joint training arc as well. But historically, this has usually been more of Deku and All Might's personality. But you can see here, Bakugo is embracing it. He's acknowledging that he has to save these people, including Deku, the refugees, and the civilians. So yeah, I mean, this is this chapter is super important for Bakugo's development. It is just acknowledging how much he has grown. This is the culmination of everything that's happened so far. After this, there is then some narration, and Deku is saying that all of his classmates were already leagues ahead of him. So what I think he's referring to is when he first started at UA, because at that point, Deku had no control over his power. The other guys were so far ahead. They've been training with their quirks their whole lives. So at that point, they were leagues ahead of him. And he then starts regretting what he said to them in the last chapter about how now they can't keep up. Midoriya then says he's sorry and apologizes, and suddenly his body gives in, but Bakugo catches him just before he hits the ground. Now, this is a little bit unsurprising because if you think about it, just before Class 1A arrived, Deku was already stumbling along the ground. He was, he'd been going hard for about a week straight, without any sleep. So it's not that surprising that he would collapse after this whole encounter with Class 1A. And yeah, Bakugo catches him, which is a pretty cool moment, although I haven't seen a panel for this yet, so it would be interesting to see what that looks like. The summary says that Class 1A looks tired and relieved, and Momo goes on to say that they resolved the first problem, but now the next one may be even harder. The chapter then has a little bit of a flash forward to when they reach UA, and at this point Midoriya is slowly starting to open his eyes. Now, the students are all hurrying so they can warn number 13 of what's about to happen, and for the first time ever we can see that she's not wearing a helmet. So, I remember in the first season, it kind of looked like she was made of nothing, but no, for the first time we see what she looks like, and nothing really particularly unique about her. I mean, she just looks like a normal woman, has a little bit of curly hair, but yeah, I mean, nothing much to say about her really. Number 13 tells them that all of the peaceful civilians have been located under an evacuation area, and the ones that are outside are mostly groups of anti-hero protesters or extremists that have gone wild alongside the jailbreakers. What this means is that most civilians who are just normal people who don't want to fight, they are in the evacuation areas, and everyone who's outside is either, essentially a villain, or they're just people who are upset with the heroes. 13 goes on to say that more and more protesters are giving up, and they are going to the evacuation zones. So that is a good thing, I suppose, because if you remember many chapters ago, when, what was that guy's name again? I think his name is, Yoshindo. So he was trying to get these guys to go to the evacuation zones, and a lot of people were just like we don't want to leave, we don't trust you heroes, we're going to stay, we're going to defend ourselves. But as time goes on, less and less, I think people are just starting to realize that is not a smart thing. You can't beat villains by yourself. So yeah, overall the situation in Japan is getting better, and the extremists, aka the villains, are getting a lot more easy to catch. 13 says that Deku's solo journey defeating the villains has really helped the heroes and police, and that much is undeniable because I think the heroes would have really struggled to beat some of the villains that Deku has defeated. The one that's in my mind is Muscular, because, besides Endeavor and besides Best Genius, I feel like most heroes would have really struggled against him. So Deku has definitely been helping out. That much, you can't deny it. You just can't deny it. The one thing he did wrong was looking so scary and intimidating, because I think a lot of people just assume he's a villain now. But no, overall, Deku did do the right thing. But now it's time to come back to school, and yeah, we'll just see what happens from there. Surrounding the school, the UA barrier is now active, and according to the leaks, it looks like a giant iron fortress. Sero comments that this is just a taste of what it can actually do, and he says that when the system is activated, it even connects to Shiketsu High. That being said, Deku is still worried about going back to UA because by doing so, he kind of puts the school under threat, given that All For One is actively sending villains after him. So by going back to the school, you kind of make the school a target. And as we can see from the rest of this chapter, he's not the only one who thinks that, because a lot of civilians are gathered outside the gate, or gathered near the gate, saying that Deku can't come in. They say that Midoriya is the one Shigaraki is going after, and that everyone's talking about it. And while this is happening, President Mike tries to calm them down, but it's useless, and they continue by saying that the principal guaranteed their safety. Deku accepts their complaints and starts to walk away, but Ochako holds his hand and stops him. She says everything will be alright, and her narration begins. She says that Bakugo, Ida, and everyone made this possible, and now they won't let him go once again. They won't let go of his hand. The chapter ends with Ochako questioning who will save the heroes when they're in pain, and turning around. The thing that she says at the end there, who will save the heroes when they're in pain, this isn't the first time she said this. She said this a while ago. I think it was when Deku left the letters at their doors. That was when she kind of thought, who's going to save him? He's out there by himself. Who's going to help him? And so this is the full circle moment when, she's brought him back. She's not letting him go again. Period. I do find it interesting though how Deku was so willing to just after this whole fight that he just had with his classmates, he's now just easily willing to walk away, and Ochako had to actively stop him from doing so. So it shows that he hasn't fully learned his lesson just yet, and he is still willing to work on his own. But yeah, we'll see how things go from here. I'm interested to see how the UA barrier is going to work because, you know, it's highly likely that All For One will still send villains to attack UA, or if not villains, then Nomu, because he knows Deku's going to be there. He'll most likely attack it because Deku is who he wants. But we'll see how things go. There's definitely a lot of potential for this story right now. Like, it's in a good place, so I'm interested to see where Horikoshi takes it from here. Just a reminder, there is no new chapter next week. There is a break. So in 2 weeks' time, that's when we'll get the next chapter. Thanks for watching as always, and until the next one, peace out.